Okay, let's call the meeting of the Sawyer County Admin meeting to order. November 9th. Roll call.
Tweet Schuman, Dale Schleter,
Yep.
James Schlender.
Here.
Ron Kinsley.
Here.
Tom Duffy.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, certification of compliance with open meeting laws.
The meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Certification. Meeting agenda. Any changes? Okay, that's fine. Public comments. Zilmer.
If you'd like to speak, and when you get to item number 13, I'd like to be recognized then.
Okay.
This Joan Cervenka has her hand up.
Oh, Joan, please, Ms. Cervenka.
Good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for the complex work to produce the maps for item 12A. I've been following at a distance some of the rules and laws relating to making these representational maps. For this agenda item, can there or will there be an explanation about the process, the criteria, and the basis for making the three maps? And when we get to the item, what efforts will be made to inform the community about the process of these representational maps? With that, thank you, and I'll wait till 12A to hear any responses to that question. Have a great meeting. Thank you.
Anybody else online with their hand?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, brings us to approval of minutes from previous meeting.
Second.
And a motion by Mr. Kinsley, a second by Mr. Duffy. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passed. Veteran Service Department report.
Hey.
Gary.
Good morning. For August, we had 477 phone calls, 264 letters, emails, faxes, and 119 office visits. For our claims, we're up to a little over $324,811 in claims that were decided in the veterans' favor. And our trade is up to date. We had an uptick in work, which is good and bad. That's good for us to keep us busier. So, any questions?
What kind of claims are these?
Claims for service connection, people that got hurt or injured while serving in the United States military. Some claims are for spouses of deceased veterans that died of service-connected conditions due to their service in the United States military. For children, recently I did 2 claims. I've got a third one that's coming back to me for 12, 13, and 9 years old for their father dying due to a service-connected injury. That's the kind of claims I'm doing, sir, for the most part. There's other claims. There's burial expenses that we count on a different sheet because I don't know how many markers you want to hear about and stuff like that. But there's burial benefits, plot reimbursement, depending on why they died. So yeah, it's all coming back for repayment for the veteran service in a lot of cases.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gary, just a quick question. These are the cases that were decided in the veterans' favor.
Correct.
What percentage is that of all of your cases?
Well, that's a good question. So yeah, you could say that I failed on some of them.
No, I'm not saying you
but
failed.
let me explain this because yeah, it's convoluted in what we do. Vietnam veterans is a good example. Vietnam veterans, when they come out of Vietnam, they're exposed to Agent Orange and the toxins thereof. In that, and people were dying. Ischemic heart disease, lung cancer, I mean, my God, they were bathing in it, they're washing their clothes in these drums, and nobody said anything. So they started dying of these different diseases, and the VA keeps an account. Every time a veteran dies, I send in a death certificate. And, you know, so they can go back and look when the veteran served, where they served, and what they died of. And we file claims for these veterans. So going back on the Agent Orange, there's a thing called presumptive list. If I come down, if I served in country Vietnam or within 12 nautical miles of Vietnam coast now, because they changed the law for Blue Water Navy just a couple of years ago, maybe, coming up on 2 years now. They denied everybody in the Navy that was within 12 nautical miles because they weren't exposed to Agent Orange. But you know damn well when there's a forest fire up on the west coast in Canada, you're smelling smoke. But Agent Orange in Vietnam, for whatever reason, it magically didn't go past 12 miles, or it didn't go out into the water. So they changed the law. These people had been exposed. They were dying of type 2 diabetes, all sorts of different cancers, heart conditions. And so they kept track of it. Finally, after, you know, 250,000 veterans that all served in the same, you know, in the same area died of the same disease, they finally said, okay, no mas, we're going to provide this as a presumptive. So the laws change, and they continually change. So now I have veterans like in my generation that went to the Gulf War, went into Iraq, went into Afghanistan and thereabouts, and served in there. And now we have veterans that are getting sick or are sick from different things. Now they started a presumptive list for those veterans. But before that, they didn't have one. So what I will do is I have veterans that are getting sick, still from Vietnam, my generation in the Gulf War, in Afghanistan that are sick, and there's no presumptives. So we file claims for them. For the Vietnam veterans, they finally come back, and it's called a namer law. So if I filed for a veteran for ischemic heart disease and the VA said, no, that's not service connected, there's no proof, there's no evidence, you didn't die of a service connected condition, that remains on file. But when they changed the law and said, you know what, ischemic heart disease is part of being subjected or in contact with Agent Orange, and we're making a service connected death by the namer law, the VA has to go back to 19 whatever or 2000 whatever and go back to that and make it right with that veteran. So I will file claims for people for stuff that I know right now they're going to deny, but I got a place marker on the wall for them if they ever come back and change the law. Now, so that's one example. I've got other ones where people come in and it's like, the sun doesn't rise in the west, it rises in the east, and I can't make any difference, but I will still file it because the veteran asked. It is not my job to say no. Right. I can advise them, I can encourage them to go down certain paths to bolster their claim, you know, to put their best foot forward in front of the VA. Sometimes, like I said, I know they're not going to, you know, in my heart of hearts, it's not going to go anywhere, but I'm going to do it for the veteran. Again, it's not my job to say no, but I will go fight for them. So. Does that help answer?
Yes.
So the percentage, sir, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage, probably right now, I think it's probably 10% that I've got that didn't make it. So some people think they had like hearing loss. In one case, actually I had 3 cases where veterans swore up and down they had hearing loss. And one of them come back, I filed the claim, 2 weeks later it come back denied. And when in fact the veterans hearing got better when they got out from the time they went in. So I don't know if they went to a rock concert the day before they went into the MEP station to get their hearing tested, but it was actually better going out. So it's hard, you know, and it doesn't mean that they're all that way, because I found the VA making mistakes. I found, you know, the veteran made mistakes, and there's mistakes in between, or the evidence just does not support the claim. And sometimes we have to go after that. So,
Thank you. I was hoping for
well,
that
in
type
depth,
of an answer.
yeah, sorry.
No, I was hoping for that
So,
type of an
yeah.
answer. Thank you. Yes.
Gary, if you could put on the amount of claims submitted and then the ones that were successful. And the other thing I would add, that it's not a failure on your part. So don't put these as you didn't you just weren't successful. It's not a reflection of you.
So,
And I think that would help us, because then if we could show if there's a disparity between veterans in Sawyer County not getting claims, then we can, that gives us tangible evidence to take, either like Tom Tiffany or,
Okay.
Petrowski or whatever.
Yep, no problems. I can do that.
Okay, any more questions for Gary?
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, absolutely. Mike? Information and Technology Department report?
So you got my report in front of you, mostly just operational, break fix, training, things like that. We're now starting to look at electronic systems for the new courtroom. Managers for the electronic systems is going to come out tomorrow. Meet with me and Tim Hagberg, and we kind of start looking at those things. Other than that, I'll take any questions.
Nope. Thank you for your report, for what you do for us. Rose, Human Resources?
Hello. Guys have my report. The only thing I would add is we have had another resignation. This was due to a family issue. So the person left. He really enjoyed working there, but he had to leave and go take care of his family. We're actually handling that by reassigning some of his duties to some of our clerical people. It's actually working out really well. We've got some clerical people in Health and Human Services that are continuing their education to go towards becoming a nurse or becoming a social worker. So this is letting them explore their passion and still keep the job and get the work done. Other than that,
Mr. Schlinder?
Did we do anything for Deidre?
when she retired, like an exit interview.
No, like a acknowledgement. It's a lot of years. Just took her keys and sent her home.
We really don't have a countywide policy about that. We don't need one. Sheriff's Department body scanner or jail discussion, possible action.
I'll refer this one here to the lieutenant.
Well, we were looking into, or have been for quite some time, looking into a body scanner for the jail. And we found now with the ARPA funds that this is a allowable purchase under the ARPA funds. Not only does it help mitigate COVID, there's a temperature scanner on there and it allows for social distancing. It also helps with the safety and security of staff in the jail. We recently had a staff member exposed to fentanyl because of inmates not related to the jail. So there's not an established process yet for the ARPA funds, so we just wanted to present this as.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. This is something that we've been working on. They've been talking about this for a while. We've looked into it and established the fact that ARPA funds can be used for this purpose. We didn't quite get the documentation ready. What we prefer to do is bring this back next month using an official process that we're going to use for other ARPA expenditures as they come forward. We just didn't have a chance to get that ready in time for today, but we'll bring that back next time, and that's okay timing wise for you guys. But we want to just formalize that process before we bring that forward, and then that process will be used for other ARPA expenditures as they occur.
Any questions?
So this issue was brought up at public safety. So what more formal process do we need to do this? Because it was encouraged there. And if we could make a motion here to advance to the board to, for their consideration.
Yeah, that's why we were trying to hustle it, is because it did come in public safety. The formal process is for the expenditure of those ARPA funds, just so that you have a mechanism of approving the expenditure of those funds. I mean, we can do it kind of unofficially. We prefer to have like a blanket, not a blanket, but a form resolution, so that each time you see something that's going to use those ARPA funds, then we'll have the same kind of process, and that'll be consistent with all the expenditures. So
Can we have Rebecca draft a resolution and then have that presented to the full board?
yes.
Because I can tell you that public safety, need to waste additional time just so that we have the formal vote
Hello,
process. So, I mean, I would be in favor, and I would
Yes.
make a motion to that effect that, direct legal to prepare a resolution
yes,
acknowledging, the proper distribution and use of ARPA funds and approving the transaction for the body scanner.
okay, thank you.
Put that to a vote.
Okay.
Unless you,
Bye-bye.
I mean, do you think the other step is necessary? To me, it feels like it's another month.
Well, it would be another month. We can get it together by county board. We just wanted to make sure that each one was consistent and it wasn't just, a verbal kind of thing, that we have documentation, because we'll have to have documentation if there's an audit on the ARPA funds. So we want to make sure that the process is properly documented, but we can get that together by county board.
So that it was mentioned in public safety. Chuck brought it up specifically. And then if we get a resolution, then you have the formal process, and then you got admin that has oversight over the committees.
Yes.
And then I'm here as public, and if I need to convene a virtual meeting for public safety to ratify that, I mean, we could do that too.
Your approval here and moving it to the board, and then we would prepare a resolution that will be doable.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we recommend the purchase of this body scanner to the full board at the next full board, and that motion also include a request to our corporate counsel to prepare a resolution indicating source of funds and the approval of the purchase.
Second. Mr. Kinsley. Any further discussion? Everybody in favor, say aye. And folks, I'm sorry, but I do have to leave now. I don't know what the proper procedure is for passing on the chair.
If someone will lead it, all chairs in the subcommittee.
Any volunteers? Mr. Duffy,
I'll do it.
it's you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I apologize.
Mr. Bender is now in.
Sorry, guys.
All right, so let the record reflect that I have been appointed Chair Pro Tem for the purpose of the meeting, that Board Chair and Board Vice Chair are both available. And we still have quorum. Moving on to number 11, radio project funding. Sheriff, you want to open the door on that one?
This is a project that we've been working on in recent years here, and we're gaining good ground here. We're coming to the end, hopefully here. And I'm going to let Lieutenant Johnson, he has worked closely with John Crook on this project, and he can do a better job of explaining some details regarding that.
Include what you need from this committee and what you need from the county board.
Okay, basically, where we're at now is we've gotten to the point where, back when this whole process started, we had originally looked at doing a microwave system for the simulcast purposes. At one point along the way, as a cost-saving measure, we looked into the internet service providers. At the time, we tested the speeds of the internet and everything was fine. We moved forward with that. Since then, we've run into some issues, and discussion never took place as far as if the internet service went down. If CenturyLink, like for example, had a major outage, what we've found now is that is creating fast communication issues with the radio system, and that the microwave is the way that we do need to proceed from this point. We're at a point now, it might seem last minute, but we're at a point now where we can purchase the equipment and get the tower climbers scheduled to have everything installed and have the law enforcement channel up and running to improve safety of all law enforcement in the county. So also help with paging and fire as well, and we'd be able to have that done yet this fall.
So what do you need?
Yeah, the radio project, has been an ongoing project. It was funded, I think, back in 2017, maybe. And so there's some extra funds unspent that would help fund the radio project. So using those funds and an additional 10 or 15,000 out of your budget would accommodate the funding for this program. So normally, because it's not crossing funds, we don't bring that to the board if it's within their budget, but we just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's a little bit different use of those funds allocated for radio projects, just to make you aware that there's different equipment being purchased and that you're aware of what's going on. So the motion, if you were to proceed, would be to approve the funding within the existing radio funds and additional operation funds.
So we're gonna make them, so you're asking, so I would be asking for a motion to present this to the full board with a recommendation for approval for this radio project.
Yes.
Right.
No, say that again.
You tell me what I should say.
That you approve the use of existing radio project funds to be allocated to this radio project.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to advance this request to the full board with a recommendation of approval from this committee for the allocation of the already allocated funds for this radio project.
With additional funds, correct?
And it wouldn't need to go to the full board because it's already within this fund. So we just want you to be aware and to approve.
All right, so we got a motion from Mr. Kinsley to approve the request from the Sheriff's Department, and because it's in existing funds, it only needs to, we just need to do this motion. Mr. Duffy?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
So I have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Do we have to define what this radio project is? This radio project?
Yeah, didn't you have a sheet?
Yeah, there's, I mean, it's defined, it's already approved. So
Yeah.
it's like,
We do.
just going through, it's got it.
We've got it up.
Okay.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to number 12. 12A, resolution for the virtual meeting policy. Is Rebecca on the line? Rebecca, do you want to give us a brief review of what this resolution is?
You bet. Thank you, guys. So based on what was presented in the direction, if you will, at the last admin committee meeting, I put together the two rule changes, one with respect to county board meetings and virtual attendance, and then also mirroring those county board rules to committee meetings. So in looking through what the existing rules are, I tried to develop the most efficient way possible to incorporate all of the ideas and the policy points that were made at the committee meeting last week. So what you'll see is if you have the resolution in front of you, going down to, let's see, it's line 43, rule 2.8 through 2.10. That is the existing rule that applies to virtual attendance at a board meeting. So rather than monkey with each of those provisions, 8, 9, 10, I struck those and just recreated a new rule to incorporate all of those provisions. So that's what the new rule 2.8 is. Just going down the list, and again, these hit the policy points that were discussed at the last month's meeting at admin. So for virtual meetings, there is, let's see, there is an expectation of in-person attendance. But if someone cannot attend in person, then that person is to obtain board chair approval of virtual attendance within 24 hours. But there is an exception for emergencies, and I also included the term other extraordinary circumstance. So, because then we don't, you may avoid, what's an emergency? Is it a family emergency? Is it a health emergency? What is it? Or the other extraordinary circumstance could be something like a vacation. Mr. Schlender, I know that, last month you had a family trip planned, not an emergency, but that would be the other extraordinary circumstance or situation. And then with respect to so we don't have a number. As we talked about last month, there is no set number of virtual meetings that may be, or number of meetings that may be attended virtually. It really is up to the board chair and his use of discretion, whether someone is abusing that policy. One point that we talked about is set forth in sub E, which is virtual attendance meeting conduct. So points such as supervisor not being prepared or doing something else in the background, whether it be another job or otherwise a distraction that limits someone's ability to listen and perform their obligations as a supervisor. So how I addressed that is that the supervisor has to follow all rules of conduct, etiquette, and ethics as required by not only these rules, but also other applicable laws. So what would those other applicable laws be? For example, if you go into a closed session and somebody is virtual, that person has to be alone in a room so to maintain that confidentiality of that closed session. So I think that was an important point for the committee last month. So hopefully we captured that. And then finally, going back to any sort of non-compliance, if there is non-compliance or an abuse of the rules, it comes back to the county board chair to address that non-compliance with the supervisor who's having the issue. If for whatever reason it's felt that the county board chair does not sufficiently address the situation or there's no further improvement, then there is the capability of taking it to the ethics committee. Obviously, the ethics committee is a very functional committee because it can act as the clearinghouse and having multiple supervisors sit on that.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
We're going to need guidance as to how that matter gets referred, because if it goes to the county board chair, who's making the referral? And then after the county board chair either makes a decision or makes no decision, how does that get advanced to the ethics committee?
Okay, so your current rules have provisions on how to get something in front of the ethics committee. So what I can do is in sub F, I can either mirror those provisions or I can reference what that process is set forth in the rules. Would those work for your concern?
That works for me. Thank you.
Okay. And I believe under the existing rules, any supervisor can move to take something to the ethics committee. I believe I'd have to double check that process, but so it does give some level of discretion and control to other supervisors and not just within the board chair if a supervisor feels like something needs to go to the ethics committee. Okay. Any questions on how these apply to the board? Okay, so then flipping forward under paragraph 4, starting at line 87, I did the exact same thing for committees. So I deleted the specific section numbers rather than try to fix all those sentences and just incorporated in all of the provisions into a new paragraph with the subsets. And again, these mirror what we just talked about for the county board. Number 1, in-person attendance is encouraged. If there is not the ability to attend in person, there needs to be permission from the chair no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting, except for emergency or extraordinary circumstances. One point I forgot that Supervisor Kinsley had raised at the last meeting. If there is an all virtual meeting, someone may still attend that meeting in person so long as there's county facilities available. So for example, when COVID first hit, there may not have been the physical capabilities to hold an in-person meeting at the courthouse. So again, if there is a facility available, and even though a chair, whether it be the board chair or a committee chair, holds a fully virtual meeting, a person can still attend in person. Again, so long as the courthouse facilities are available. So I apologize, I forgot to touch on that when we were going through the board rules. But again, that provision applies both to board meetings and committee meetings. Let's see, we talked about the other emergency or extraordinary circumstance. That is the basis upon which it's determined whether to participate virtually. And then again, a committee member has to comply with all rules of conduct, etiquette, and ethics. So those expectations before, when one is participating in a board meeting are also applied to one's participation at a committee meeting. And then in the last section, again, this is the, what happens if somebody doesn't comply or abuses the policy. It goes to the committee chair first. And then the committee chair takes it to the board chair. So this is a little bit different than the board rule, because obviously we have a committee chair and then we've got the board chair. So then the process, once it gets to the board chair, then the process is mirrored as set forth in the board version. So what I will do is make that correction, Mr. Schlender, that you requested under the board rule version. I can make that same correction in the committee rule version if you like.
Very good.
Okay.
Scroll down a little more.
All right. Any other questions, or and just looking back at our very good discussion at the last meeting, I think I hit everything. Of course, if you have other questions or would like further revisions, let me know, and we can certainly make those now before the board meeting. Or
any questions from the committee? Mr. Kinsley.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Kinsley to approve this resolution. Second from Duffy. Just one point of order One point I'd like to have incorporated is for the meetings, there should be a presumption that we're going to meet in person and virtual is an option.
Mm-hmm.
So we can just have that, some kind of language in there so that there's, for new members, that they're encouraged to appear. And if they can't, then virtual is the alternative, not the primary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did include that. I'm just trying to find that section. I know I included it. At the very top, even before a subparagraph. So looking at the second page at line 49, Rule 2.8, the introduction is all county board meetings shall be held in person.
Yeah, right.
However, county board recognizes that some circumstances may require virtual. So if that suffices, otherwise I can also add.
That works.
That works? Okay. And again, the same language for committee meetings is in.
Any more discussion on the motion? Call for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so that concludes 12A. We are now 13A, redistricting plan. So Ms. Zilmer, I know that you asked for some time at this. Do you want to speak now, or do you want to wait till after we get a presentation from Brian?
Please wait until after the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Brian, the floor is yours, sir.
Yep, I'm going to introduce Brian DeReese is our GIS expert who has spent tons of hours on this process. I watched for a little while, and it's no easy feat to get 3 maps done and try to meet all the criteria that's required in the statute. So, but he's here today to show you the map options and also explain a little bit about how he went about developing these. You'll be able to ask questions. The process today is if you agree that one of these is closest to what you want to recommend to move forward to county board, You can still recommend changes at this time that Brian can incorporate. So we can approve a resolution subject to the changes that you suggest. Once it goes to approval, then I will send that choice, once it's completed, if there's edits, back out to the county clerks, because they all received all these maps originally. Right, sorry about that, the town clerks. The day after Brian got them done, probably just a few minutes after Brian got them done, and to me, they got an email version. If anybody requested a paper copy, we just asked them to contact Brian. Brian provided them, so everybody had access to the maps. They've been posted on the window of the county clerk's office, so they've been available to the public. Next Tuesday, we will be having a meeting open to, it's designed to help our municipal clerks understand the process of developing the wards within whatever approved plan is set forth. So Brian and I will be holding another Zoom meeting at 10 o'clock. Each of them will have 5 minutes he'll show them their section, explain what happened in their section. They'll be able to ask questions and move forward with any changes that they need to then take to their board or whoever is asking questions. Once we get their responses back, then it has to go to the November meeting, public hearing for a final approval and off to the state. So Brian's here to show you the software and how this whole thing started.
I got one question, if I may, please. How balanced are we with all the districts? The example, I think the last time we did it, we were within 3 or 5 people.
Yeah, okay, so, you know, on my screen here, you'll see there's an overall plan deviation. So right now I'm looking at choice 1, and we've got a plan deviation here of 9.71. So that's the percentage of, you know, away from perfect we are in the whole county for this plan. I'll sort this attributes by deviation, and you can see that 1205 is the best number, and we try to you know, meet that population. Each one of our maps has kind of a different overall deviation, and it would be nice if we could look at the 2010 numbers to compare what we had going on there. Because we were working in this software, you know, we were doing the same thing in 2010. But I don't have that same breakdown to look at. We can look at 2010 boundaries as we have them today. But I don't have the numbers necessarily to compare to what we've created this time around. So in 2010, we had a little bit more time. I think you're all aware now that, you know, in 2020 here, we didn't get the census data until the end of last month. So, you know, instead of having all summer to really kind of parade maps around to townships and, you know, nitpick and make, you know, a wide variety of maps, we've really kind of, you know, focused on getting our 3 map choices created, and I have them here to present to you today. We're in the software. We can make changes. We can, you know, right now, if there's some tweaks we need to do to make a plan work, we can make some tweaks and, you know, prove it. So should I just go from plan to plan?
Yeah, and those little numbers up there, of course, are the populations in those sections. So 27 people in that.
Yeah.
Little.
So kind of, you know, these supervisory districts go past municipal boundaries, and some supervisory districts are in different places than they were before. So it's hard to kind of just go, you know, kind of compare 1 to 1, but I'll just kind of go around the county. You know, so in Leonard Township, currently, we had 2 supervisory districts. So this is choice 1 of our 3 choices. It's got the worst deviation overall. This map was created to include all supervisors in their districts except 1. Because
I might have to.
You're in your district.
Yeah, but people who voted for me are now no longer in the district.
Yeah.
We made we asked them to make an overlay of the supervisor's addresses so that it could plop over the top of all 3 maps.
Yeah. So we got you there. But so, okay, so yeah, this one was made to keep everybody in their district and except Ed Peters and Don Pettit's districts have been merged together here in Draper, Northern Winter. The population changed this time around.
1,573 total, right?
Yeah. So, so we had to, move districts around. It could be understood that, maybe there's one less district in the winter area, and there's one more district in the, centrally populated Bass Lake Hayward sort of area. So that's kind of how this one worked out. Now, these are census blocks. So each census block has edges that are real world edges. Water bodies, rivers, municipal boundaries, roadways. So that's why they're oddly shaped. Perhaps if we're, if we were in a different county, maybe we'd probably have different shapes, right? So thinking if these shapes look a little odd, it's because of our county. If we had farm fields and roads on the section lines, you'd have square census blocks. So that's what we have to work with. Basically, going through it here, looking at District 1, it's got, 48 people that could be still added to District 1 before it made it to the perfect number. Chip away at District 2, but District 2 has 17, not enough people in it as it already is. When these districts cross municipal boundaries, that creates a new style sheet for voting. Ballot style for municipalities. And it would create a ward boundary. So every ward boundary has to be on a supervisory district boundary. So maybe the less that we cross into towns, the less we're, kind of causing change and causing paperwork. So that's taken into account. Basically, we're looking at population size, compactness, and it's got to be contiguous and, not dipping into another township just to pick up like 10 to 15 people. So while these numbers, that's what keeps maybe some of these numbers from being better. But this is option 1. So.
Can't overlay the existing map.
Oh,
Can we go to option 2 or, so when you do 1, 2, and 3, because we have 3 options, right, or 4 options? So we have 3 options. Is there a preference ranking or are you just labeled 1, labeled 2, labeled 3?
It's just a random.
Can we look at number 2?
Yeah, let's look at 2.
Spam.
If it's possible, before we leave option 1, there is an overlay option that Brian can do that can overlay the enacted existing supervisory districts over this map so you can see how your boundaries change. And I think this map is worth probably the most discussion, because it's closest, I think, in most respects to what you have now.
And actually, that is the premise he started off. This first one was to try to keep it as close to what we had.
I think that's the 3rd one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, this one does not.
This one we didn't use our current to start here. This was getting in and making a map, putting the pieces together. So I overlaid the currently enacted supervisory district boundaries, but I'm not sure how it's split.
It's just clicking an option for me when I did it last night.
Yeah, I'm
You
sure.
can take our
it's
names off there too, but.
hard to see.
Everyone know what it is.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Would it be inappropriate for me to show the option?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got it turned down.
Oh, you do have the.
Yep.
correct
Show
overlay
currently
turned on?
enacted boundary supervisor.
Okay, all right, because it doesn't show up as clearly in this.
No, yeah,
I think it's the,
there's a lot of data here to see. When you get too many things on one map, you're not gonna see it all. Our current supervisory district boundaries, we made lots of maps in 2010. The one that was adopted. I mean, who cares about my opinion? It wasn't really the one I liked, but whatever. It was the one that we made a lot of concessions to make sure that every supervisor was in their district. Some supervisory districts were extended in ways to only allow for that weren't for population, weren't for compactness, and weren't for thinking about missing boundaries. It was making sure that the supervisors were in their districts. Those supervisors, most of which don't even exist anymore. So
they're not here. They still exist.
they don't exist as a supervisor in Sawyer County anymore. So while that is an option for us to go, is to take our current boundaries and modify them to fit the population, it's not serving the county. It's serving past supervisors that don't.
So let's take a look at number 2.
Gotcha.
Unless you, does somebody have any more questions?
All right. All right, so here's option number 2. Just kind of zooming in so we can see it. There's a lot to, hard to visualize this whole thing. We've got an overall plan deviation of 6.64. So this is better plan deviation. That means the numbers are closer to equal on this plan than plan 1. This plan did not take supervisors' locations into account. This plan also, the first plan crosses in, the first plan splits 7 or 8 townships. This plan splits 6 townships. Basically, we've got a district in Lenret. The entirety of Lenret can't be one district because it just doesn't make the deviation, but that would have been nice. District 2, including Sealy area, Spider Lake, Round Lake. District next. Let's look at the city. So we currently have the city broken up into 3 districts. This plan breaks the city up into 3 districts. Plan 1 breaks the city up into 2 districts, but that really doesn't help the overall plan deviation. Although it would be nice to not need to dip into the city, but for about 100 or so people. But that's what we've got going on in this plan. Hence the overall deviation's better. Yeah. I think we've got a pretty long district here in District 10. That just kind of is how things start to happen when, say, District 12 comes over and needs more people. You eat away at District 10. Bass Lake needs, 3 districts or so. So then you start adding to District 10 up in Bass Lake. So it did get a little long. I agree with that. And while we didn't plan supervisors specifically in their districts, it does, I think it works out.
That's what it works out.
So you dropped 5 all the way down into Coudray.
Yeah, so District 5 here, yeah, shows the whole town of Coudray. As far as the reservation is concerned, you know, we've got District 5. That has.
So you got 9, 5, 14, 13 that are essentially covered up with the reservation.
Yeah, so, yep,
10's on the border.
yep. You know, we've got majority of American Indian population, you know, census designated races, as you can see along in this attribute list. So, you know, majority American Indian population, I'll sort it in 9. Five. Yeah, 9, 5.
Is there any questions on option number 2?
Option 2, are the present supervisors all in their own district?
Yeah, let's take a moment and take a look at that.
Mr. Chair, can you occasionally check to see people online if they have their hands up? We do have other people that may have questions too, just to make sure that you get that covered.
No hands up right now. So I can open it. Yeah, I see what they turn blue.
Okay. Wait.
No, for sure.
So I guess what I'm asking is, this plan number 2, the present supervisors are in they're in the district with not supervisors.
Yeah, I've got to get a.
Is that true for all the map choices?
No.
One has a challenge.
Yeah.
What about option 3?
Let me finish this one first.
Well, no, I'm just wondering if that's something you have a top of set.
So let's just kind of go geographically. This is still 2. We've got a supervisor in there. The supervisor for 1 is in their district. Supervisor for 2 is in their district. Supervisor for 3. I got wrong, but wait, 3. Oh, 3's over here. 3 is in their district. 4 is in their district. 5 is in their district. 6. 6 is in their district. 7 is. Who is 7? Yeah.
Tom Duffy.
Tom
So you're
Duffy.
7.
So Tom, we don't have you in that district. We can make adjustments to get that to work. Okay? If that's what we want to do, that's what we can do, right? So then, so 7's
So let's keep looking at the rest of them and see where we're at.
tested, yep.
That's,
8
but
is in their
7 still
district.
is in the city.
Yeah, we would just need to bring it up and over.
Yeah.
8 in the district, 9 is in the district. 10. And is in the district. Halfway through. Oh, one. 10, 11. Okay, this is a different district for sure. I'm not sure about that. So 11's kind of like a new district there. We can make these numbers different too. If there's a whole supervisory district that's just not consistent with the number of. Okay, so then, yeah, so then you've got a District 12 down here with a supervisor for District 11 there. So, you know, that could get.
Dale. So you took, under this map, 5 and 11 basically swap.
Yeah. 11 there, 12 there. You know, right now we can swap that. There we go. So now 11's in their district. Yep, 11 is 12. 12 is still kind of something new. 13. 13. Yeah. Okay, so we can keep massaging these numbers. Let's go. There now, District 12 has Don Pettit in the district. District 13 is now up there. And we keep kind of shifting it around. So District 13, District 14 on my map. District 14 is going to have District 13 and 14 in that same district. Okay. There's only 100 or so people in Meadowbrook, so you know that Meadowbrook's going to just get bagged into somebody else's. You know, it's how it works. And then 15, the big district over here, has Ed Peters and his Drapery district.
Could you zoom in on number 7?
Yeah. So here's number 7. That includes the city's annexed land for their wastewater treatment.
So is that contiguous?
No, but statute allows it because.
Yeah, we talked to Rebecca about it.
Okay.
Because it's zero population with the service or something like that. Rebecca could answer it specifically.
Yeah, it's not so much either that it's zero population, it's that it's contiguous from city land standpoint. So technically, I mean, the law does not encourage annexation of what's called an island, which this area where the zeros are is technically an island. But in this case, there's obviously reasons why it was annexed. And so because I don't know if you can see my cursor, but these areas for the city are contiguous. And so that's why it's acceptable under the statutes. That makes sense?
Do we have any more questions on option number 2? Zoom.
Just to clarify that in option 2 versus option 1, it shifts all the lakeshore owners around Lake Chautauqua from the westernmost district to the eastern district.
Yeah, so this was one of the issues with our census blocks. So here I've got a census block highlight. I'll try to get this to show. It's not going to show well. There we go. So you see that's an entire census block. That has over 100 people in it. And it makes a large impact to either district. If I need 40 people, I can't get 40 people out of this district. So yes, we could include this district with District 10. Then it would really start to change our plan deviation. So we'd have to start remassaging the map. But yeah, this is definitely an example of, you know, an area of change and an area of circumstance when it comes to our census tract boundaries.
And Mr. Schlender, if I might ask my process questions from public comment at this time. So if I understand correctly, an email went out to the municipal clerks on September 1st with small PDF files, which are kind of difficult to see this. Most towns have not had their monthly meetings yet, so there's been no local public discussion. And so my concern from a process standpoint is the committee is expected to make a recommendation. The broader public at large has not really seen this. I only saw this because another citizen forwarded me an email, and I tried to do a crash course last night. The notice that went into the newspapers explains that the first public hearing is on September 16th. So will there be a lot of questions in light of the fact that the county board next week is going to be looking at one preferred option that probably hasn't had a lot of input from other affected people? So my question now then would be, if in Edgewater, when they hold their meeting next week and they would see that, let's just assume this committee recommends option one, or I mean this option, and the town says, hey, we don't like that all of Lake Chautauqua shoreland owners now got moved out of a district. Do they have recourse or not? So I'm thinking about, I understand there's a condensed time frame that makes this really difficult, but how is the county board going to potentially reconcile all these concerns that will come in a very condensed time frame? So, thank you.
Rebecca, feel free to chime in on the timeline process as well. That's why, again, on Tuesday, we're having that municipal clerk meeting where they can invite any of their town supervisors or representatives to visit, to attend with us. It's going to be very difficult. And we knew that from the onset. We fought to have this crunched at our level, but it didn't pass, so we're stuck with it. There's no easy answers. We can still go back and forth, but Rebecca, I would assume, or not assume, can it at the November public hearing, can adjustments be made at that meet? If we have changes before that, can they adopt the change?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
So we can have comments between.
Do you want me to just go through a bit of the statutory process just to address Ms. Silmer's concerns, which are certainly legitimate concerns given this compressed time frame. And you know, we at WCA worked incredibly hard to try to ensure that counties had sufficient time to do this work. This process was supposed to have started last spring. And obviously, to no fault of anyone in the county government, that couldn't happen. So the policy decision was made at the state level that this is the time frame we have, and so this is the time frame we have. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, every county is working hard to address these issues within this compressed time frame and getting as much public comment as they can. Now, that being said, even though we have this compressed time frame, there still are statutory provisions relating to the public hearings, when changes can be made to the plan, and et cetera. So as Ms. Fitch mentioned, you know, once the county got this information, these meetings were set in such a way to ensure the statutory public notice requirements were met, but then also the timeline requirements set forth in 59.10, and that's 59.10 sub 3 is the primary statute we're talking about when we're looking towards the redistricting requirements that the county must comply with. So within 5910, we have to have a public hearing prior to the adoption of the tentative plan, which is what you're looking at today. And again, that public hearing is on September 16th. Then once the county adopts that tentative plan, that's when it goes to the municipalities, and the municipalities have to follow their own process, both from a hearing standpoint and from an adoption standpoint. I have told Ms. Fitch that, you know, she's obviously the county clerk and is, you know, taking this thing by the horns, and giving as much help to the municipal clerks as possible. But they also have to make sure that their statutory obligations are complied with. And so Lynn and I have been working closely together on those questions. You know, certainly I'm not legal counsel for any of the towns. And I've, again, worked with Lynn quite a bit to make sure that the county is taking the position that the municipalities are doing the work that they need to do. One of which is adopting an ordinance or a resolution within 60 days on the tentative plan and the adoption of their wards. Once that occurs through that municipal process, then it comes back to the county board for the final adoption. And the statutes are also clear that you can make adjustments after the public hearing for that very reason that you're talking about. So there can be public input, and the final plan can be adjusted based on, you know, those comments from the public and that public input. You know, if the board feels that those changes should be considered or made, you can do so. So that's just a little, it's surprisingly a brief background on the requirements of 5910 sub 3. And how those interplay with the municipal requirements. The short version is, yes, you can make changes to the plan. And I give Lynn and Brian significant kudos for all the work they've done on this. Just done an outstanding job given the timeframes that we have to work with. And also, as I mentioned too, Lynn is trying to do a lot of outreach for the municipal clerks to help them out. But they also need to make sure that they comply with their statutory requirements as well.
Is there any other questions?
We have any answer?
Is there anybody online that has a question regarding option number 2?
Nope.
Any more questions? Let's take a look at option number 3.
So option number 3 used our current municipal boundary, our current supervisory districts as a starting point. It's got a planned deviation of about 4%. This,
Let the record reflect that Mr. Schluter has returned at 11:10. You wish to resume being chair?
No, you go ahead. Unless I'm supposed to.
So this is option number 3.
yep,
Mr. Schluter, we're on item 13A, the
Thank you.
maps.
alrighty. So option number 3, this was based off of our current supervisory district boundaries. So compactness wasn't necessarily taken into account as much as manipulating our current boundaries so as to, you know, satisfy our population change. Going around District 1 has a supervisor in it. And it extends down into the city like it has in the past. District 2 has their supervisor in it. District 3 has their supervisor in it. There's District 4. Same as before, kind of splits up this. Yep, supervisor's in it. District 5, supervisor is in it. District 6 shows the supervisor in it. And District 7, this one does have the supervisor in it. Yes, let's see, it comes up and around. District 8 has their supervisor in it. District 9, yep, we've got supervisor in that one. District 10. District has their supervisor in it. District 11. Yep, Dale's right there. District 12. Should be good. Oh yeah, District 12 is Dawn and she is in it. District 13. Scott Ron in it. District 14, the supervisor's in it. District 15, the supervisor. So yeah, this one works out with the current supervisors. It was based off of our current map, so that makes sense.
Is there any questions on option number 3? Yes. So
I guess if Brian wouldn't mind going into describing more of option 3, my concerns are with the new districts 12, 13, 14, 15. The way certain towns have possibly 3 supervisory districts in them, and then the chopping up of municipal borders.
Yep, 14 kind of comes up the river here to make up their population. So Ojibwa has 3 districts in it with a real tight pinch point. Honestly, you know, maybe we could make some changes here. 14 and 13. Well, yeah, well, yeah, let's see what happens. Well,
so what's the concern that you're raising right now?
Compactness and contiguity in that if you, and I'm thinking from the election clerk's perspective, now all of a sudden, because yeah, if that's the town of Ojibwa and you have if you have 3 supervisory districts, how do the voters know who they're voting for and what do the ballots look like? And do you want to keep municipal, I mean, I think keeping municipal boundaries as kind of a grouping is beneficial in many ways. And so to minimize that, I think of the 3 options, this one could create the most confusion for voters and work for clerks in attempting to meet population and supervisors in their districts. So if some of those, and then conversely too, you have some supervisory districts that have multiple towns or parts of towns, and so how does that affect that county board supervisor? So that was the problems I saw in option 3.
So the municipal clerks have wards that they design their ballots for, correct? Yeah. So that's how that would be resolved, is the municipal clerks would have the polling places with the wards, and then the person identifies and they all check in. So
And most everyone is going to be electronic. There's going to be, equipment is changing now where most are going to the ICE machine or the do ICX. So a lot of it will be electronic. The other ones are just going to be the tabulator.
Also, Brian can produce that map for that township, show all the break. He's done that in the past, and it works absolutely wonderfully.
we've currently got a website where you can put in your address and it tells you where what ward you're in and all that, and driving directions to get to your polling place.
And that goes on Westboat site, so it's available to anyone to
Yeah,
tell
we
them
provide
where.
municipalities with any support they need to make sure that they can find who needs to be in each ward. So it really, well, you know, it ranges in cost to create different ballots. There shouldn't be any confusion or issues as long as people use the materials that is provided to them.
And the current poll list is gonna tell them where they're at.
Yes, it goes electronically into the Wisconsin state system,
Right, so it's gonna show,
and
like,
it
I go in
gives
there, it's
them
gonna say-
directions right to their polling place.
and it's gonna show, once you're in there, when you go in
Yes.
to check in to vote, it's gonna tell what ward you're in. So you're gonna know where you're gonna vote. I mean,
It
where
will
you're
have the
gonna vote.
ballot styles for that, yes.
Do we have any questions online from anybody that's attending virtually? Steve, you got a question? No, just a comment. I think it's a very viable system the way you have it set up. And an example would be the city of Hayward itself, which has multiple districts, and the clerks seem to be able to handle it that way. So this would be very little different from that.
Oh, Radisson's been split up. Kind of know that.
Yeah, I mean, these places have been split up, so. Be nice to keep things simple. I mean, you know, we're rural and there's large areas and no population, and it would just be nice to make those make sense.
Two questions. One is the village of Radisson is in 13 or 14.
Looks like we got purple's 13.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and so basically north of the highway is 13 and south of the highway is 14.
But in the
Oh,
village.
the village, yes, sorry about that. The village is.
And the other question is, tell us again the deviation percent of each one.
All right, so again, the number we're trying to hit is 1,205 people. District 1 is one person off of that. District 2 is 10 people, not enough. So they're at negative 0.83%. District 3 is at 1.16% with 14 people over. District 4 is at 1.24% with 15 people over. District 5 is negative 1% with, under 12 people. District 6 is perfect. District 7 is 19 people under, so negative 1.58%. District 8 is 8 people over. District 9 is 11 people under. District 10 is 1 person under. District 11 has 11 too many people. From that perfect number, really, I mean, 11. It's not 11 too many people. It really isn't. District 12 has negative 23. District 13 is 25. District 14 is 6. And District 15 is negative 5. So this plan has the best plan deviation. Again, it doesn't take compactness necessarily into account, but it did take population into account pretty heavily. So that's that's what this plan has going for it, is the deviation.
Is our plan today to approve one of these?
Well, that's what I'm looking at the agenda.
Yeah.
Only four of the 15 supervisors here, so it's tough for four.
Right,
There's
but-
technically an oversight committee that makes this choice, and this is the oversight committee.
So we just make a recommendation to the full board.
Yeah, okay,
And it's gonna go to the full board, and the full board's gonna have a chance to vote on it.
that's all.
So any more questions on option number 3? Right, well, what do we need to do today?
I like the plan 3 because everybody's in the district and that's the one that does balance stuff.
And Plan 3 has all supervisors are in the right districts.
That with people, the president of the board, and if someone's gonna run in the future, they're gonna run from the home they're in for that district.
And I'll second that motion.
Well, you can make the motion, or you're making a motion. Yes.
Yes. make a motion, this Tom wants to make a motion, doesn't matter, as long as we get it done.
So looking for a motion. Looking for a motion on a recommendation for a map to advance to the county board.
I will recommend the motion, recommend map number 3.
Mr. Kinsley makes a motion to recommend number 3. The Duffy from Mr. Second from Mr. Duffy. We're all kind of getting a little bit. overwhelmed. So the motion on the floor is to advance option number 3 for consideration and possible vote to the full board. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call for vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan. for your work.
Can I ask a question on that? So at the county board meeting, Brian is planning to attend, even if it's via Zoom, I believe. He'll be there. So would you like him to display one plan or 3 at
Bring them
that
all.
point?
They should bring
Bring
all,
all. Okay.
all 3 plans should come, so all the board members know what they're looking at,
Excellent.
and then with the recommendation of 3.
Right. So we're just making a recommendation. If the board wants to look at something different, then they can, and then we give them the options. So we're giving them 3 options to choose from, the, the information that the changing from 2010.
There's a lot of information to digest here. It hasn't, this has been the first time we really sat down and discussed it in a group outside of me, Lynn, and, people adjacent to us. So,
And I can say that several clerks have been calling Brian and getting on the phone with him, asking questions. So they are being active.
yep. And this condensed timeline makes us all rather uncomfortable, but what we get out of it is the correct political proceedings. When it comes to, when we're done with this, we will have the right representation for each individual in the right next election. So
Nothing about this is going to get easier.
yeah,
So
the timeline's no good, but
we'll just talk about this next Thursday.
it's good out.
All right. So thank you for that. Moving on now from 12 to 13.
Rebecca, hand up. Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yes, just briefly, because the board meeting is also the public hearing, I would encourage you to bring all 3, bring all of the information, just as if you were redoing today's meeting.
Right.
So we have a resolution here for signing that you recommended map 3.
Okay. So do we need that's sufficient with the original motion? All right. All right. We're moving on now to number 14. Mr. Hawk.
That about sums it up. Moving forward.
All right. Well, that's one of the best reports we've ever received.
All right.
Eloquent.
there you
It was,
go. If your signatures
Shakespearean.
don't go away.
Is he coming back? Oh, he did. Thank you. Mr. Hawk, you have the floor. Sweet.
Okay. I got my agenda misplaced. Our topic is the wage package discussion is on the agenda because that was forwarded from the Public Safety Committee, correct?
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't think, I think it died.
Well,
I think you're right.
and we don't need to talk about that. I will address that issue, however, because it is a topic that does come up in just about every committee as far as where we're at with hiring people.
Oh, the wage.
Yes.
No wage.
Is that the?
Overall wage review process, I guess that was what it
Yes,
was.
I think that was the motion that came up. All right.
That was you.
It's getting longer and longer.
Okay, so.
So just for clarification for the record, and for everyone else is present, at the public safety meeting, we had a report from the Sheriff's Department and our law enforcement agencies, the jail, deputy, dispatch, starting to get into the ambulance. We're at critical, we have a critical shortage for qualified applicants, and we're looking at potential overtime and possibly placing inmates or prisoners or people who are in jail, possibly placing them in outside jails so that we can alleviate the statutory requirement of how many staff we have on during a scheduled shift. And so a motion was made from the Public Safety Committee to examine what the wage process or wage packages were. And it's only advisory. It's a request from Public Safety for this committee to review the wages, because this is an issue that is countywide from different counties. We just wanted to make sure that that was brought to the attention. Mr. Hoff, you may proceed.
Yeah, so I'll address it as far as the countywide portion, and then you can address the sheriff portion as well. From the countywide perspective, as I started to say, we do have issues throughout the county as far as where we're at in hiring employees. In the good old days, we used to get 20, 50 applications for open positions. Today, we're fortunate to get one or two, and then it's always a question on whether they're qualified or not. So when we have an open position, we look at several factors, one being wage, obviously, and where we're at. There are certain groups that, we do get behind on as far as the market of those, and those, we try and address. We do have a compensation study or compensation plan that was a result of a study from, about 5 years ago, that we update each year and present to the board, and the board approves, the compensation plan. So we talk about, and what we've done in the past few years is an overall increase to that plan. So the last couple of years, we've done a 1.5% increase to that compensation plan so that we can relatively keep up with the overall plan as we move forward. There are areas, as I said, that we have competition from private, where there's technical skills or certain skills that are needed for a job. Not only do we have a hard time finding those people, but the wage may be an issue. So when wage is an issue, we try and look and see what others are doing. Rose does a lot of work in comparing what we do with other counties. And we make adjustments to that comp plan when necessary. But, we still have issues. When that compensation study was done, it proved that there were areas that we were not paying market value for certain positions, but it took $200,000 or $300,000 extra to bring everybody up to speed. We've been trying to whittle that away as we proceed through time here, and so we've made some corrections to that. But I think if we look at the overall compensation of the county, perhaps we're still behind to probably that extent. So it's always a challenge in funding. As we looked at the budget and we had budget discussions in finance this morning, we still got to close a gap to get under the levy limits. And so we're kind of weighing the options of what do we do with the compensation versus the money that we have to do it. So I'll let the sheriff's department just kind of talk about what we've done in the jail specifically, or the issues that you're having in hiring from your perspective.
Basically, what it comes down to is obviously when Tom talks about qualified positions, I mean, for the jail and dispatch side, there is not the college degree requirement or the college education requirement like there is on patrol. But still, for anybody who's toured the jail or, heard anything, seen anything, there can be days that are less than fun to work in the jail. So it's tough to find people who are willing to do that 12 hours a day for, half the week and then retain them. We've run into issues in the past where, Barron County's paying $5 an hour more, so they'll go. Fortunately, most of the time, those people then want to come back because they see the grass is now greener. I'd like to think that we have a pretty good organization and pretty good county here. But like Tom said, like every other department in the county, we're competing with, especially for the non-college requirement, the jail and dispatch positions, we're competing with Quick Trip, we're competing with Arcland, just different factories like that around here. The issue that we run into in the jail is as Mr. Slender had indicated that we have minimum statutory staffing requirements to have staff on duty 24 hours a day. So that's where we run into the issue. And when we don't get enough qualified applicants, then it requires us to either house out of county, force staff in to work on their days off, or deny time off requests, which then adds to them not wanting to work here anymore. And it's just kind of a vicious cycle. But again, like Tom said, it's that difficult position of where does the money come from? So, which, we obviously completely understand that.
Any other questions? The wage discussion is just for discussion only, so it doesn't require action per se.
I'm thinking about how it comes into play when we did the contracts. I don't think there'd be any conflict with that because the contract was set up for percentage for each year. I think.
Well, the union contract is for the patrol only. That doesn't apply to jail or dispatch.
All right, hearing nothing else, Mr. Hoff, do you have anything else to report?
No.
All right. Well, with that, moving on to number 15, future agenda items. Is there anything that the committee would like to have for next month's agenda? And then number 16, correspondence reports for conferences, matters, and other matters for discussion only. Anything that the committee wants to discuss that's not on the agenda? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.